Hey guys, what is going on? So, Elden Ring just turned 4 years old at the time that I'm starting the recording of this video, and I thought what better way to celebrate that than to make a video covering some salt regarding the game. And luckily for me, Harman Smith, the notorious Nintendo fanboy, decided to provide me with some. And he decided to provide some salt in the form of a video called Elden Ring is no longer a sacred cow, and you can see this beautiful AI thumbnail that he created to go along with that amazing title. So it's 9 minutes and 42 seconds, and what I thought we could do today is just go through it together. So sit back, relax, and brace those brain cells, guys.
The sacred cow has been slain. After Duskbloods was confirmed to be a Nintendo Switch exclusive, it's like somebody just flipped a switch. All of a sudden, people were beginning to notice the things that I had been saying for years, the things that was bringing up, and the things that were very apparent to me. It feels like it's now kind of a mainstream thing.
Okay, Mr. Gaming Prophet I knew before everyone else, enlighten us with your wisdom.
Because traditionally, the reason why FromSoft was hyped up the way it was because it was something that the industry thought they could gaslight people into believing was better than Mario, Zelda, and Metroid.
Or maybe some people just liked the format that FromSoft games took, the challenging but fair and rewarding exploration-style gameplay. Games that are extremely hard on the surface, but the more you explore and the more you learn about the game, the easier they become. Believe it or not, just because people like things that are not Nintendo does not mean they only like it because they want Nintendo to fail. Crazy concept, I know.
Like, the entire reason FromSoft was allowed to become so successful and become so popular, like, even though game journals can't really beat them and, don't really care about them at all.
If game journos don't care about FromSoft games at all, then why do they give them all really high scores for the most part? And it's not like it's one of those instances where game journos are giving FromSoft games very high scores, but the players are not liking the games. The players and the journalists really like FromSoft games.
Like, the entire purpose of it was to downplay Nintendo. And that's very apparent. If you look at, old NeoGAF posts from, around 2011.
Bro, who the fuck uses or ever used NeoGAF?
And see how often, the posters on there insist that, Dark Souls is way better than any Zelda game.
I don't know if I'd go as far as to say Dark Souls is definitively better than Zelda, because that's kind of a hard thing to measure, but are people on these forums not allowed to like Dark Souls games over Zelda games?
You really begin to notice, the patterns of just how obsessive and,
Holy shit, Harman, you really need to edit out these long pauses in your videos. A pause now and then is necessary when you're speaking sometimes, but Jesus Christ, man.
You really begin to notice, the patterns of just how obsessive and, cultish these people have been over the past, almost 20 years now. Demon Souls is almost 20 years old.
For you to say that From Software fans are cultish when you are one of the most cultish Nintendo fans of all time is honestly hilarious. Bro, you unironically make videos saying that people should go to prison for pirating old-ass games that are 30 years old. Not even pirating in a lot of cases, for simply emulating them, even if they own them. Also, every time a game comes out and it gets a little bit of success and it's not a Nintendo game, you act like it's a threat against your existence. But yeah, From Software fans are the cultish ones.
So, these guys have, when Elden Ring came out, it was universally, considered a masterpiece. It was considered one of the best games ever made, and for a while there, just before the Duskbloods was announced, there was this push to classify it as the game of the decade.
What was considered better than it at the time that it came out back in early 2022? The only other game I can think of that was near as good as Elden Ring that came out that decade was Doom Eternal. And of course, you hated that game as well.
So tonight I played a little bit of Doom Eternal on stream. I spent about like, I don't know, probably about an hour playing through it. Probably not that long, maybe half an hour, playing it and commenting on it and really giving my opinions on it. But I really wanted to make a video for it to give my overall thoughts on this thing. Doom Eternal is a giant piece of shit.
And just like, really glazing this and hyping it up to be like this all-time great game. And like, for when it came to like, older players and people who like played Dark Souls and stuff like that when it was new and before it was popular, like there was this big like underground thing where pretty much everyone universally agreed that this game was not as good as Dark Souls. Like it felt like a rehash. There was nothing new, fresh, or exciting. This was just the same thing again with no real innovations outside of this idea that like, well, it's in an open world now, but there's nothing in it. There's nothing to find. It's not a fun game. Okay.
A lot of people think repeat playthroughs of Elden Ring is not as good as a repeat playthrough of something like Dark Souls 3 due to the fact that Dark Souls 3 is more linear, but a lot of people say that Elden Ring's first playthrough is one of the best out of the entire Souls series. Personally, I think Dark Souls 3 is the best Souls game, however, Elden Ring is still a fantastic game, and I think the first playthrough of Elden Ring is truly something everyone should experience.
Like, Elden Ring, very specifically, was not a perfect game.
Well, no fucking shit!
No game out there is a perfect game. There is no game that you can play that will not have some flaw for some person. I'll go to Metacritic right now and go to their top games of all time, and I bet you I will find a flaw with the top game. Let's take a look. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the frame rate on the original hardware was shit, and Navi was annoying. But obviously, even you would agree this doesn't make it a bad game. Just like how Elden Ring's flaws doesn't make it a bad game, even though the flaws are still there.
There were lots of things that you could say about it. There are lots of things that just weren't good about it, and like, people like myself were playing the game and bringing it up.
In all of your videos, you never really made valid criticisms of the game. You would just randomly talk about how it wasn't a Nintendo game or how an unrelated Nintendo game was better. Tons of people made valid criticisms of Elden Ring. You were not one of them.
It was very, very apparent to pretty much everyone that like, Elden Ring was kind of a disappointment. It wasn't what it was cracked up to be.
Is that why when it came out, it took the entire internet by storm, and the game expected to sell 4 million copies, but sold 12 million in the span of 2 weeks? It now sits at 30 million. That doesn't sound like a disappointment to me. And it's not a case of the game just selling well, but people not liking it. Everyone loved it.
Essentially, this was not the best game of all time. It was kind of limited and stale compared to the much more innovative Breath of the Wild, which came out 5 years before, and Tears of the Kingdom, which came out the year afterward.
How can you say Elden Ring is more stale than Tears of the Kingdom when Tears of the Kingdom literally reused the exact same map from Breath of the Wild like 6 years prior? And keep in mind, I'm not even saying that Tears of the Kingdom is a bad game. Like, I personally enjoyed it. I just thought his statement was funny.
Like, Elden Ring was just not on the same level as what Nintendo was doing at that time. Like, not even just with Zelda, but with, like, all their other franchises as well.
Well, back in 2022, it was Elden Ring that everyone was praising and talking about and playing, and not those other Nintendo games that were apparently much better. Like, don't get me wrong, they did release cool shit in 2022. I thought Splatoon 3 was pretty cool, and the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass was pretty cool, but none of that shit is holding a candle to Elden Ring.
And for a very, very, very long time, until the Duskbloods was confirmed to be a Nintendo Switch exclusive, the narrative was, don't talk about this. Like, you could not criticize Elden Ring at all. You could not bring up the reality of its situation. You could not, like, critique it. You could not criticize it. This was a perfect video game, and if you criticized it, that just means you got filtered. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I was told that, like, you just got filtered, bro, or you can't beat it, when like I actually played quite a lot of the game.
I don't know, man. Harman Smith definitely speaks like somebody who couldn't get past Margit.
I got like several hours in, I beat some bosses, and I kind of noticed that like, it's really not that fun. It's really not that challenging. It's really not that difficult. You just explore until you find things that you can use to kill other things. That's it. There's no depth when it comes to like the dungeon design or the boss variety or the combat mechanics. Basically, like any other FromSoft game, you just keep playing the game until you can find something that you can exploit that just works.
I wouldn't really call it exploiting. It's almost like the game is putting stuff in the game to make it easier for you to fight the bosses if you are struggling, so you can kind of choose your own difficulty. That's kind of why Elden Ring had such a wide appeal. It was like other Souls games, sure, but the open world mechanic and the exploration and the rewards you got for exploration made it a lot more manageable for newcomers.
You just keep building your character until you can actually beat the next boss, and then you just go on to the next boss. That's it.
So like every RPG ever? And if you replace the word boss with Pokemon trainer, that describes your beloved Pokemon games as well.
There's no real technical depth to Elden Ring.
That is just objectively false because of all the different ways you can build your character with different spells, weapons, miracles, and stats.
It's not really fun.
What you find fun is completely subjective to you.
Like, it's not even like well animated. It doesn't even look good,
The game looks completely fine. Sure, it doesn't have photorealistic graphics like a next-generation Sony game, but the game looks completely fine, and only graphics snobs seem to really have issues with the graphics of the game. Graphics don't make good games, bro. And you should know this considering you're a Nintendo fan.
Anybody who says this couldn't run on a Switch 1 is like delusional.
Bro, it is a Japanese game. If they could have gotten this on the Switch 1 with all the success surrounding the game and sold millions more copies, they would have done it.
It's crazy how sloppy Elden Ring is.
Coming from the guy that can't edit out 10-second long pauses in his video.
It is crazy what this game, like how little this game offers.
Bro, on my first blind playthrough of this game, it took me 100 hours. And I've read online that it takes 200 to 300 hours to 100% the game. But tell us more about how little it offers.
And how little, how little it's grown and evolved.
2 years after launch, it got a DLC that people thought was the size of an entire game, so much so that it even got nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards 2024.
And how, they're still using assets and animations that were established back in Demon Souls.
So what, dude? The animations are not broken, so don't fix them. Also, Mario Kart uses the same items from game to game for the most part, and I don't see you complaining about that. Let me guess, it's only a problem when FromSoft reuses shit, and not your precious Nintendo games.
This is an extremely derelict, rehashy IP, with no real innovation or change.
The change from a linear game to the open world in a Souls game was a huge mashup. It completely changed the way Souls games were played, because traditionally if you got stuck on a boss, you were kind of just stuck there beating your head against a wall until you beat it, whereas Elden Ring gave you the option to go somewhere else, find an item to help you, and come back and beat that boss easily.
And the thing about that is that the vast majority of the audience just can't bring themselves to admit it. They can't admit how stale and repetitive these games actually are.
Once again, this coming from a Mario and Zelda fan is insane. They can make 100 Mario games and that's completely fine, but the second they reuse some assets in a Dark Souls game, it's the end of the world.
Elden Ring is just the textbook example of the random third-party game that was put on a pedestal because the industry thought they could weaponize it against Nintendo, right? And now that it no longer serves that purpose, now that it's getting a Switch 2 port, now that it's getting like a new entry exclusive to Nintendo Switch, like it's being taken out with the trash. Okay, like pretty much everyone universally agrees that the Duskbloods is not going to be successful. It's not going to be as big of a deal as Elden Ring. But like what people don't want to admit is to why. Because I keep seeing people see this thing that like it's because like Nintendo consoles are inferior or like the multiplayer or anything like that. Like the simple reality is like FromSoft was never popular.
In 2022, Elden Ring was the best-selling game that year, only behind Call of Duty. By the way, it sold better than any Nintendo game that released that year, but tell me more about how they were never popular.
Elden Ring is the very definition of a game that is all hype and no substance. And the simple fact of the matter is, after the failure of the DLC,
I like how Harman Smith claims that the Elden Ring DLC fell flat on its face and failed when the Elden Ring DLC sold over twice as many copies as they expected Elden Ring to sell in general. The amount of cope coming from Harman is insane here.
after everything FromSoft is done, all the flops after, Armor Core failed, Night Rain failed.
I'm not even the biggest Night Rain fan in the world, but even I can admit that it did not fail. Night Rain sold 5 million copies. That is more than they expected Elden Ring to sell, and it's a spin-off.
Like, the simple fact of the matter is, the company is on the way out.
They just in recent years had a massive, astounding success. I doubt they're on their way out, dude.
It is never again going to be able to coast off the open world hype of Elden Ring. Everything else they do is going to be negatively held against them, and they will never again be able to gaslight people into thinking that Nintendo is better.
I think you got your words messed up there. I think you meant to say that Nintendo is not as good as Elden Ring, or whatever the fuck. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to add onto the rest of his video, so I'm gonna go ahead and end things here. If you guys did enjoy today's video, a like would be greatly appreciated. If you didn't like the video, you can leave a dislike and an angry comment. And yeah, that's everything from me. I'm out.